Sponsors. Wow, I'm so much louder now. We have a number of sponsors for Human Trafficking Advocacy Day, and I'd like to spend just a couple of minutes to give them some appreciation for their support to end human trafficking, starting with the Choate Construction, also Delta Airlines, and I believe we have some people from Delta here this morning. If you're from Delta, would you mind standing up real quick? Thank y'all so much. Quick round. Thank y'all so much for being here. Also, Anderson, Tate & Carr, the law firm of Anderson, Tate & Carr, Frontline Response, and House of Cherith. We're going to begin with a moment of prayer, and I'd like to invite Jeff Shaw from Frontline Response up to lead us in the invocation. Jeff?
Good morning. Father, on days like today, when we're lifting our voices for those who haven't found theirs yet, and for those who have but are trying to navigate a more free and just world, we just acknowledge our need for you. We pray for wisdom as legislation is crafted. We pray for power as we advocate and lobby. And God, we that serve you believe that you move the hearts of men and women. And so we pray that you would go before us as we prepare to go over to the Capitol in a really significant week for all these bills, and that you would do the heavy lifting and that we can come in behind you and just see great fruit take place. And we thank you for all the men and women speaking today, from law enforcement, prosecutors, private attorneys, legislators, that you would bless their efforts and give them strength during session. And we pray this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Thank you, Jeff. So this morning, we're going to hear from a number of prominent legislators talking about the issue of human trafficking and child exploitation. I think all of us in this room are aware there's a human trafficking problem in Georgia. Many of you are probably aware that Atlanta is considered a hub for trafficking and exploitation, which raises the question, why? Why is Atlanta a hub? Why is human trafficking occurring here? Why are women, men, and children being bought and sold in Atlanta and across the state of Georgia? And Atlanta particularly is because of our business-friendly climate, our large airport, our tourism. What is it about Atlanta that makes it a hub for exploitation? I will tell you what it is. It's not the airport. It's not the events. It's not the business community. It's the fact that there are men here willing to purchase children for sex. That is the issue. We are here this morning to advocate for bills to stop this and put the fear of God, the righteous fear of God, into the hearts of those who would purchase children and those who would exploit them and those who would traffic them. So I'm so pleased that we have so many legislators here this morning who have dedicated or prioritized defending the vulnerable and bringing the guilty to justice with us here this morning. We also have with us here this morning those who have been tasked with fulfilling the law. We are eager to hear from them as well. Is Attorney General Chris Carr with us this morning yet? Okay. Attorney General Carr has not arrived yet, so we're going to begin with GBI Inspector Jeff Rossler. Jeff Rossler started with GBI in 1997. He has served as Special Agent and Crime Scene Specialist, Assistant and Special Agent in charge with GSAC, Special Agent in charge over the Polygraph Unit, and in 2020, he became the Special Agent in charge of the Human Exploitation and Trafficking Unit. Jeff now serves the Inspector of the HQ Investigative Division with the GBI. It's a privilege to have him with us this morning. Jeff Rossler.
Good morning. On October 13, 2022, the Polk County Police Department was called to assist the Cedartown Police Department in locating a missing juvenile. Sally was reported missing from a foster home and was last seen by her foster parents taking out the trash. On that same day, Cedartown Police Department was notified that software utilizing AI and facial recognition obtained a possible location where commercial sex ads were posted depicting Sally. Essentially, Sally was located on several online postings advertising commercial sex acts, and the postings were listed for the metro Atlanta area. On October 14th of that same year, Sally was recovered by the Lumpkin County Sheriff's deputies. During a subsequent interview, she stated that herself and another female in the photos was also a juvenile named Mary. Sally stated that she and Mary met at a previous group home for sexual assault victims. Mary had a boyfriend named John. Sally stated that Mary and John traveled from hotel to hotel throughout the state of Georgia. Sally also referred to John as her and Mary's pimp and stated that John has juvenile girls working for him by providing commercial sex acts to buyers across Georgia. Sally stated that John would wait in his vehicle in the hotel parking lot while she and Mary performed commercial sex acts with buyers in the hotels that John would pay for. On October 20th, Sally provided DFACS with information providing Mary's whereabouts. Sally stated that she located online sex advertisements posting from Mary on Skip the Games, which is an adult services website that advertises commercial sex services. Sally also provided that she communicated with Mary and learned that Mary and John were located inside of a Super 8 motel in Georgia. Local law enforcement acted on the information provided by Sally and recovered Mary at the Super 8 motel. John was also located at the hotel and confirmed he was with Mary and further advised that he was giving her a tattoo. Detectives located Mary and knowing that she had a fresh tattoo on her chest which stated loyalty. As I'm sure most of you are aware, pimps and traffickers will sometimes brand their victims with tattoos to demonstrate possession or ownership over them. Mary was transported to the hospital where she was released to her mother and grandmother. John was released at the scene. The GBI became involved in the investigation on October 27th. GBI and HSI agents conducted follow-up investigative leads at the hotel where Mary was recovered. On the same date, just 7 days after Mary was released to her mother and grandmother, she ran away again, and her family believed that she was with John. The agents conducted research and discovered the additional commercial sex ads had been posted online depicting Mary. Therefore, evidence suggested Mary was with John and that John was continuing to subject Mary to sexual servitude. The agents were able to confirm similarities between the current and previous online ads. In continuing to search for Mary, the agents canvassed hotels in the surrounding areas where Mary was previously recovered. Due to this effort, a hotel manager contacted the agents within hours and advised that John had arrived and purchased a room. The manager confirmed the make, model, and tag of John's vehicle, and as a result, agents began conducting surveillance in the area. While conducting surveillance, the agents communicated the details of the investigation with the Assistant U.S. Attorney. The AUSA agreed with the agents that there was sufficient evidence to establish probable cause for a search warrant for John's room and the vehicle. However, it was determined that if John attempted to leave with Mary prior to the signing of the warrant, the agents would effect a takedown and ensure Mary's safety and protection. At approximately 3:15 of that day, agents observed John and Mary attempting to leave the parking lot. They converged, taking John into custody and taking care of Mary. The GBI agent conducted a custodial interview of John where he denied trafficking Mary or posting any online ads depicting her, which is normal. The agent then confronted John with evidence obtained during the investigation and called the number on Mary's online commercial sex ads. The phone, recovered from John's back pocket, began to ring. John later admitted in his interview that he was aware Mary was a minor. John also did admit that he just finished tattooing the word loyalty across Mary's chest while John was holding a bag of tattoo equipment. Additional evidence was also located which directly showed how John manipulated Mary with the concept of having loyalty to him. We didn't stop there. Following John's arrest, the GBI and HSI were able to identify 3 additional juvenile girls who were subjected to sexual servitude by John between August of 22 and Mary's recovery. During subsequent forensic interviews, the 3 juvenile victims disclosed how John would post them in online commercial sex ads and transport them to Atlanta, Macon, and Savannah to provide the juveniles for commercial sex buyers. John was indicted before a federal grand jury for 2 counts of sex trafficking of a minor, 2 counts of production of child pornography, and 2 counts of distribution of child pornography. This investigation could have ended at John's federal indictment. However, the GBI agents were determined to continue the investigation and target the buyers who paid for the commercial sex ads of the 3 juvenile victims. The agent conducted an in-depth search in digital forensic evidence and identified multiple suspects who communicated with John to arrange the purchase of commercial sex with 3 juvenile victims. The GBI agent then conducted an in-depth analysis of evidentiary information gained through legal process, which led to the identification of 8 suspects who likely paid John for commercial sex with the juvenile victims. Further investigation into the identity of these buyers confirmed that one of them was currently employed as a deputy with the local sheriff's office. The case against this former deputy is also pending court. 3 of the remaining 7 buyers have been identified by GBI agents and are in the process of being prosecuted in partnership with the Georgia Attorney General's office as well. In total, this investigation has led to the arrest of 4 traffickers, the 1 who sold them, the 3 who purchased and obtained them, with additional arrests expected in the future. This case began as a local police department responding to the report of a missing juvenile. Months later, through outstanding investigative work and strong partnerships with local, state, and federal agencies, 3 juvenile human trafficking victims were rescued and recovered. Like Jeremy said, my name is Jeff Rossler. I'm the inspector with the GBI, and I'm proud to highlight the GBI, specifically the efforts of the agents working this case and the cases like this. The GBI started the Human Exploitation Trafficking Unit in July of 2020, and I had the privilege of being the agent in charge to start that work unit. This story is a true case, right? This is somebody's life. It's not something that you'll see on TV. These are 3 young ladies whose lives have been altered forever by the manipulation of one person. There are dozens more just like this. Since the start of our work unit in July of 2020, the unit has averaged 96 human trafficking investigations each year. So far on this fiscal year, which we still have months to go, we're already at 95. We've got 4 agents throughout the state that are assigned to work adult and minor sex trafficking, as well as all forms of labor trafficking. We have 3 agents in South Georgia that are tasked with combating agricultural labor trafficking of migrant workers. Like I said, we've averaged 96 cases already, but just since January, so just shy of 2 months, we have opened investigations that have touched the following communities: Candler, Daugherty, Murray, Bibb, Miller, Gilmer, Coffee, Carroll, Hart, Whitfield, Habersham, Bartow, Monroe, Clayton, Houston, Floyd, Walton, DeKalb, Gwinnett, Bryan, Clinch, Cherokee, Toombs, Eccles, Wayne, Ware, and Cobb counties. 28 different counties in less than 2 months. You have my word that the men and women of the GBI, specifically those assigned to the GBI's Heat Unit, are working hard and leveraging their relationships, leveraging their resources and partnerships to help eradicate this horrific crime and the people that commit this crime, both the sellers and the buyers. Thank you.
Well, I don't think I can get it down, so I'll stand on my tippy toes. Thank you, Jeff. Now we're going to introduce Pat McDonough. Pat leads the sex trafficking division for Anderson, Tate & Carr. He has dedicated a large part of his life to giving back to the community, helping countless survivors with arrest records and improper charges. Before joining Anderson, Tate & Carr, Pat was a district attorney in the state of Georgia. leading a multifaceted team that created child advocacy centers to help victims of sexual abuse with a comprehensive approach that addressed both trauma, recovery, and legal representation. Please welcome Pat McDonough.
Thank you. So you got to hear from the GBI, and there's a whole dedicated, wonderful force in Georgia that's doing great things on the criminal front, from the prosecutors to the GBI to local law enforcement. As anybody who works in this space knows, it takes a village. You have to hit it from every aspect, right? So we take it from the civil aspect, and we represent survivors that have been trafficked out of business that profit off of their trafficking. And this is essentially how it works. And one of the things I think that you can help kind of change misconceptions. You heard from the GBI, and that was a very classic story. That's what we see also here. But I think a lot of times when we do focus groups to get ready for trial, people think this is like the movie Taken, or that there's somebody that's coming off a boat and chained up to a bed somewhere, or someone's in a basement somewhere and they're coming in and out. And it's not that that's not a possibility, but here's what we have run into and what we see in our survivors. We've settled 41 cases now. We have probably another 20 cases in the pipeline. And what we see is the trafficker. The trafficker's like the drug dealer, right? They're trying to sell a product for money. And then you have the buyer. The buyer's coming to buy the product. Unfortunately, the product is the person, right? And to sell the person for the sex act, you have to have a place. And what we found is one of the places that is highlighted, and I think in the brochure it even mentions that hotels or motels can be used at up to 80% of the time. And we found in Atlanta, and when we talked to other rescue organizations around the country, there's just these pockets. There's just these businesses that decide, you know what? We're gonna make money off of this, and we're gonna just turn a blind eye. And the law basically says, and there's a couple different ways to get there, but it basically says, if a business or a hotel is making money and they knew or should have known that they were making money off this trafficking, they can be held accountable. And so that's what we do. Usually the next thing people ask me is, isn't this re-traumatizing for the survivor? Should they do this? And the short answer is, yes, it can be re-traumatizing, right? They might have to do a deposition where they have to recount their story. But the real question is it worth it to the survivor? And there's an exception to every rule. There are sometimes that survivors can't move forward. But what we found is the majority of our cases, that these survivors are not only doing it to kind of get back what was taken from them, but they want to help the next survivor. All of you out there are here not just because you didn't have something else to do. You're here because you care. You want to make a difference. You want to try to help the next survivor. You want to make a change. Let me tell you who cares most about that. That's the survivors. The survivors are tougher than people realize. They have been through a lot. They have been through complex trauma, but you give them an opportunity to take it to the place that knew what was going on, and don't underestimate a survivor, because they are some of the most powerful people in the world. And what we've found is that their strength is this. A lot of them are on the verge of poverty and have really tough situations in their life, right? And there's these great organizations that are trying to help them get back on their feet. But when they get back on their feet, what they're most interested in is trying to ensure it doesn't happen to the next survivor. And then secondarily interested in, most of them have families, and they want to make sure they can break this generational problem that has happened to them, this exploitation. So this gives them that voice. The other powerful thing about a civil case is we work for the survivor. So if at any stage through that process they decide this is too re-traumatizing, this is something that we do not want to do or don't think that I can go forward with, they can just get out. Like they're the ones that they control their entire destiny on this. So we started this about 5 years ago. We weren't quite sure, honestly, if it was going to work. I've run into some good friends around here. When I talked at the beginning, I used to talk to Bob and Jeff, like, I have this great idea. But what we've been fortunate enough to do over time is seeing the strength of these survivors to really come through this. And we've now settled over 40 cases. I just got a video the other day of someone walking their little girl into their new home, right? We tell people that when they get mental health, like they should get Kardashian mental health, right? They should be able to go to the absolute best mental health places in the world to turn their place around. We've got a trial coming up, and I was talking to one of our survivors, and she says, I'm now working at a rescue. I'm now helping the next survivor. So we have seen the power of this, and we believe it can make a difference. The other thing it can do, and I saw that there's a bill up here, so there's, again, multifaceted. What we've learned is it's not that hard. I've interviewed people at the front desk, and they say, I'm making $12 an hour. If they tell me to rent rooms to anybody, I rent rooms to anybody. I can move down the street 3 blocks, same type of economy hotel, and they say, hey, we don't do that here, and they train people. And the training is not rocket science, right? It's not, the police cannot be everywhere. They cannot have a position in every single hotel. But guess what? If someone sees something that's suspicious and they say something, they call law enforcement, guess who doesn't want to come back there? The traffickers, right? The buyers. I had a federal judge just about a month ago tell me in here, and he goes, when we were kids, everybody knew where you could go buy a beer when you were underage. Well, the traffickers know where they can go, and the hotel's going to turn a blind eye or going to be a lookout for them and try to keep law enforcement from there. So these survivors have really taken the next step, and they are truthfully making a difference. And I think both through legislative works like this and when you hold businesses accountable, it's going to get them to start training their employees. So we are beginning to make those steps. Since today is Lobby Day, I will just highlight one thing. I know on the sheet there's a number of great bills that they're talking about. Also, every year there's something called tort reform, and I'm not here to debate tort reform. But what I want to tell you is, if they pass a tort reform, one of the unintended consequences can be survivors might not be able to bring a claim. So if you talk to your legislators, just tell them whatever side they fall on tort reform, that we want to make an exception for survivors of sex trafficking. The other thing, and I was telling Jeff earlier on the way in here, every time I come to Lobby Day, I think I'm going to really work on legislation next year and get with people, and then I get busy representing survivors in my cases, and I don't do it. But a couple of things, if there's somebody out there that thinks, where can I help? What can I do? Get with Street Grace and their organization, and people that actually do lobbying efforts, and we can make a difference. I have survivors that I know have a case, but their statute of limitations is run. And we could pass a look back that said, hey, we're going to allow you to have 1 year to bring your claim, and then that would give everybody an opportunity to do that. So there is so many places where you could come in and you could make a difference. So I just want to thank you for the short time that we've had. I want to thank all the rescue organizations that have worked with me and actually took a chance on me years ago by referring clients to us because, we didn't really know what we're doing. And I thank you for coming out today and everything you do, because I'm telling you, it takes a village. Thanks.
Thank you again, Pat. Now we're going to introduce Senator Sean Still. Senator Sean Still was elected to the Georgia Senate in 2022 and currently serves as Georgia's 48th Senate District, which includes portions of Fulton, Forsyth, and Gwinnett counties. He also serves as the Vice Chairman of the Senate Committee on State and Local Government Operations and the Security of the Senate Committee on National Resources and the Environment. Additionally, he is a member of the Senate Committees on Education and Youth Transportation. Please welcome Senator Sean Still.
Good morning. So we will be introducing, hopefully on crossover day tomorrow, it'll be chosen in rules tomorrow and then it'll be on the floor Thursday. What we believe to be the largest, most significant human trafficking package of bills that has now been blended into a singular bill that our state has had since we even began talking about human trafficking legislation over a decade ago. Hey, Michelle. My neighbor on the front row. It's nice to see her. So here's what the bill does. Here are the 3 bills rolled into, and then the constitutional amendment. So right now in Georgia, we have a victims fund, but it's only for minors. So when we look at Safe Harbor and what that does, that's state dollars that are going into a bucket, and then that money is distributed. What we did is we looked at model legislation in other states, who's doing it right, who's doing it wrong, what can we do to make Georgia move from number 7 to number 50 in terms of the harshest, toughest state in the country on traffickers. If there is not a product, our children, our people are disenfranchised, are vulnerable. If we take that away, or if we make the punishment so great that it's going to make them want to go elsewhere, then we hope that other states will copy this as well. So the first bill, and the one that's really been the spiciest but has gotten the most support and attention, is that we are going to have on your ballots in November a constitutional amendment to vote for the creation of a human trafficking victims fund, and that will be of all ages. That will be funded by, and here's the fun part, civil forfeiture. So right now, we have civil forfeiture on the books, but what we don't have is a direct pipeline for those funds taken from traffickers to go directly into this fund that will be comprised of its own board, and those funds will be completely distributed out towards the rehabilitation, the care, the rehoming, the expungement of records, all the things that are needed to get victims' lives back on a different track. And so in doing that, we have to identify what's involved in the civil forfeiture. And we worked with, believe it or not, an organization called GACTL, which are the criminal trial lawyers, the defense lawyers, and they even helped us tighten up the language further. They actually didn't oppose us. We thought they would. We were kind of reluctant at first to talk to them, and they were like, no, we actually want to help you define this. So anything that's used during the commission of a crime, so their cars, their homes, if it's a privately owned hotel, if it's an Airbnb, anything like that is going to be seized or be subject to civil forfeiture, and be able to take all of that to help our victims. So that's the kind of the centerpiece of this. The other bills that were detached that are now combined, and thanks to the help of some much smarter people than me in legislative council, they rolled up 2 other components to that. Number 1, or I guess the second bill, is mandatory training for frontline workers in hotels, motels. A lot of the big brands already have training, but the lower brands, call it what it is. Red Roof Inn is the #1 place for sexually trafficked victims in the country. Number 2 is La Quinta. To avoid responsibility, they've kind of shifted to using a model of using, and not in every location, but in many locations, they use staffing agencies to provide the housekeeping. So now we're going to mandate that there is annual training provided by the CJCC, overseen by GBI, so that they know how to identify it, how to report it, what to do with it. What triggered all this on the hotel motel piece was very close to where Michelle and I live, North Point Mall in Alpharetta. The La Quinta Inn there just a couple of years ago was using their entire 3rd floor for over a month. All cleared off, all with the consent of the manager, to use that as a hotel trafficking location. And housekeeping didn't know how to report it, and the people on the 1st and 2nd floors were not complicit in that crime. And so how do we train those people on what to do with that? So we're very, very proud of what we're doing with that. There are some other bills that are floating out there. The First Lady has a bill that's posting awareness signs in convenience stores and gas stations and things like that. One of the funny side conversations was when we were talking about it, they were saying, we're going to do this bilingual English-Spanish. And I said, that's great. I said, what about Chinese? What about Korean? What about other Asian languages that they're trafficked too? And if you're going to put this in an Asian massage parlor, I don't think English or Spanish are going to do anybody any good. And so they said, you know what, you're right. And so they're looking at ways that they can, bring all that together. Senator Estevez good friend from the Buckhead area, he has a bill that we hope will make crossover that's going to be involved with expungement of records, so that his bill will directly work into cleaning up records, wiping out things to do with, what have they been charged with, how do we clean, their records quickly and get that going. So back to my bill. So the third piece and the final piece of it is with regards to minors. Right now, if they're under 18, they can be charged and they can still show up on their record. So now anybody 18 or under, and there was a lot of back and forth on that, is it 17 and under, 18 and under, what's the statute and all the different areas of it, but we narrowed it down to 18 and under will not be charged with a crime if they're trafficked. And so it just takes that off the table for DAs, prosecutors to ever even look at. So once that's all done, so that's one big bill with three parts, and then the fourth piece is the constitutional amendment, which is it's done as a resolution, but we'll push it through that way. So that's going to be very powerful, and we'll know on Thursday if that passes, which I believe with being supported by, can't say endorsed by, but supported by members of the Grace Commission, by the Lieutenant Governor's office, by staff at the Governor's office, by the Attorney General's office, and by some amazing NGOs here. So Street Grace, Wellspring, and others that are, obviously pushing this and getting behind it. And as a fun fact, I've known Bob Rogers a really long time. We met many, many years ago when we both didn't have gray hair and went through a program called Leadership Gwinnett. And this has just been an absolute blessing to me to have the opportunity to carry this bill and to push this forward. So happy to take any questions if y'all have questions about the bill or the function of it or kind of the path of what went on. Yes, ma'am. We're not. It's not being reinvented. It's CJCC as a government agency sets the standard. They can go beyond that, but right now they're not mandated to do anything. So big brands, I believe, are doing that, right? One of the potential amendments that will come on the House side if this crosses over will be an adjustment to that to also include innkeepers, people that are using private properties for Vrbo, Airbnb, that sort of thing, that it'll mandate that for them as well. So we are trying to widen the net a bit on this and make sure that we're scooping up as much as we can. Yes? So the question was, who wouldn't support the bill? People that are nervous about upsetting bad people. I will tell you, just as a matter of on this path, I'll speak kind of in vague terms, but there was another bill separate to this that was kind of part of the whole package that would have fixed the glitch of not treating clergy with enhanced penalties for sexual abuse of children, because teachers are held to a higher standard, but clergy are not. And I wanted very much, for many, many reasons, to correct that, right? Make sure that clergy are held to that higher standard. If you're a Sunday school teacher, if you're coaching athletics under the auspices or the guidance or the umbrella of a church, whether you've gone to theology seminary school or not, if you are working on behalf of a church in some way, that you are also subject to a higher standard and enhanced criminal penalties for abusing children. And what was advised to me through the process was that's not exactly specific to human trafficking, while it's in the general sense of abuse, but it's not specific to trafficking. So we need to take it out of this package of bills and run it separately next year. So it's one of those things that I think attracts attention, and as long as you're on point and on mission and you have a very singular focus, it will be, no one can oppose it publicly. GACTL as an organization was concerned, but once we met with them and walked through the bill with them, they actually came on board. I have 50% of the signers of the bill are Democrats, 50% are Republican. I did that by design. So far, no, nobody is going to be opposing that. And then if it does cross over, those of you who may know Representative Deborah Silcox, she has some direct family connection to victims of human trafficking, and she very much wants to carry this bill when it makes crossover. So we have a lot of strong advocates pushing for this, but we have to make sure that we stay on message and don't get wobbly with that. So we will bring the clergy bill back, but that'll be a next year initiative with that. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for supporting Street Grace, for all the NGOs that are working towards stopping human trafficking. And we do believe that as a bipartisan measure, that this is not something that should be politicized. This is just doing the right thing and making sure that everyone knows and understands why we're doing it. On a final note, I will just say that I'm blessed that I live in a gated community, because bills like this attract the attention of people that don't like to see them succeed. So not politicians, but other bad actors, the people that are the pure evil of this world that are doing this to other human beings. There is an ugliness out there that all of you are aware of, but I would just ask that in your evening thoughts and prayers, just add me to the bottom of that list, because this is going to be some choppy waters along the way, and I know that as we shine a brighter and brighter light onto this, it's going to make some bad people really upset, which makes me really happy. So I thank you all so much. Bob, thank you for all that you do, and I'll be at the Capitol if y'all need me. So thank you.
Okay, so just a couple of quick things. Just so that you know, if you hear footsteps that are running frantically across the lobby. This always happens on Advocacy Day, and when we get together, we always know that we build a schedule, we plan everything to the minute, and we know that it's meaningless once the day starts, because legislators have schedules and things like that. So a couple of things for you to know, and then we're going to go into a brief training with Jamie and kind of an overview of the bills and legislation that we're considering this year. That is, today, the House and the Senate right now are both in caucus. So we are 48 hours away from crossover day. So if a bill doesn't pass out of its chamber by midnight on Thursday night, it's dead. So you, including Senator Still, who just pulled out of the meeting where he was presenting his bills and the legislation that he's asking to be considered, and others, are actually having friendly discussions right now about the value of that legislation and what they're trying to get through. So we are shuffling some today, and we may get over to the Capitol a few minutes early, which will be a really good thing, especially given the day. Then in addition to that, our governor and attorney general and other dignitaries were invited to participate or attend the funeral this morning for the Georgia State Patrolman who was killed in the line of duty just a few days ago. So obviously they're making the right decision and they're in the right place. And so we're sad for the family, and we completely and totally understand that. But just wanted to give you a quick update on where we are. So if any of you sing and dance or anything like that, if you could just slip me a note, we'll see if we can work you into the schedule. But after that, so Jeff, be prepared. I've seen some of your acts. But Jamie, if you would come and give us a brief overview, we'd be grateful. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Bob. So we tell you now to go ahead and buckle your seatbelts and put on your safety goggles and brace yourselves. We're about to talk about legislation. I'm probably the only one who gets that excited about it, but I do get excited. Next slide, please. So this is our policy platform for 2024, and just like Bob said, it's a very hectic day at the Capitol. I was here yesterday, and just to reiterate what Bob said, Thursday is crossover day. If a bill hasn't made it out of its chamber of origin, by midnight Thursday, it's dead, right? And just to recap so everybody knows, the bill gets filed, right? Senator Still, for example, filed his bill. It gets put in the Senate hopper. From there, it goes to a committee. The committee has a hearing. If it gets voted out of committee, it goes to a floor vote. And then it passes the floor vote, it goes to the other chambers, so it goes to the House. So that's what we're talking about here. Then it does the whole thing again in the House, right? And also to put things in context, just real quick, when I say human trafficking, what am I talking about? I'm talking about using force, fraud, or coercion to compel any adult to commit a sex act, or for anyone, minor or adult, to commit an act of labor involuntarily, right? Or I'm talking about any sex act where something of value was exchanged and a minor was involved. Automatically human trafficking. Easy way to remember it, adults always require a showing of force, fraud, or coercion. Labor trafficking, adult or minor, always requires a showing of force, fraud, or coercion. If we're talking about a minor, and we're talking about sex, and we're talking about anything of value is exchanged, money, drugs, housing, food, that is human trafficking. So our policy platform this year, we're looking to combat the illegal massage industry. We always want justice and restoration for survivors, and there's some great bills to do that this session. We'll talk about the hotel training a little more. We want to protect kids from pornography and grooming. We want a shield for victims. And of course, we want tougher sentences for those who traffic and exploit children. Next slide. Let's start with Senate Bill 36. Senate Bill 36 makes pimping and pandering a felony on the first offense in the state of Georgia. What is pimping? It's not trafficking. Pimping under Georgia law is more like kind of a catch-all, someone who's a middleman. Maybe they're driving someone to meet a buyer. Maybe they're placing ads. Maybe they're somehow promoting or other. That's what actually a lot of other states call this promotion of prostitution. Georgia chose to call it pimping. That's what we're talking about when we call pimping. Trafficking is always a felony. Pandering is sex buying. Sex buying. Historically, the emphasis has always been on arresting prostituted individuals, not just in Georgia, but around the country. Within recent years, law enforcement and prosecutors are waking up to and realizing that, look, we can arrest all of the women we want. They're fungible, they're replaceable. The traffickers will get more. It makes no difference whatsoever. All we're doing is traumatizing victims and giving them criminal records that they later have to work to try to get expunged. Of course we want to arrest traffickers. But I'm here to tell you this morning, I said it last year, and I'll say it again, we're never going to arrest our way out of this problem by arresting traffickers. Should we? Yes. Yes, we should. Vigorously prosecute those cases. But they are insulated criminals who chose this path of criminality because of its low risk to them and its high profits. These cases often hinge on victim testimony. They can take months, if not years, to accomplish. So why not put some more emphasis on the consumer end of this illegal market? Any market is like a triangle. You've got a supply of something, and this side, in this case, it's people, victims. You've got people who distribute and market that, right? Well, traffickers, right? And then you've got a consumer base. You take away any side of that and the market collapses. Well, we know it does no good to attack the supply side. We want to attack that distribution side, and we are. But what if there's no commercial base? What if there was no market for the victims? If there was no market for the victims, there'll be no market itself, right? Senate Bill 36 accomplishes that. Get it closer so I can see my screen. Male sex buyers are proven to be, by studies, more violent than the male non-sex buyers. Most of them know that women have been tricked or lured into prostitution or may be victims. A majority of them know this. It does not matter. Jail or prison time is the second most effective deterrent to buying sex, but the duration of time a sex buyer has to serve for the crime is critical. That's why we want to make it a felony. I want to say this in a political way, in a politically friendly way. When you're talking about a prosecutor, right, in a large urban area, he or she is going to have a line of felony cases. They're going to have a line of felony cases out the door. When a police officer arrests a man for sex buying and it's a misdemeanor, and that guy has resources, and that guy's lawyered up, and that guy's attorney goes in to meet with the prosecutor, that prosecutor's not like, oh, I'm making my career off of this case. No, I've got a line of felonies out the door. I'm going to make whatever deal he wants. I don't care about this guy. It's a misdemeanor. And he's going to make that, or he or she is going to make that deal as a matter of self-preservation. Make it a felony, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, felony, huh? We're going to take this a little seriously. I can't make a deal. Your guy's going to have to he's going to have to be tried, and he's going to have to take whatever conviction he gets, right? It tells our law enforcement, this is a priority for Georgia. We want to stop human trafficking. We want you to be arresting buyers. Only 2 other states have made sex buying a felony on the first offense. The first was Texas, followed by Montana earlier this year, 2023. Let's make Georgia the third. This is one of the most important bills you will see this session. Next slide, please. Senate Bill 370 by Senator Hodges, combating the illegal massage industry. It also provides for signage, a great bill. We have a long way to go in Georgia with combating the illicit massage industry. I'm sure all of you kind of know what I'm talking about here, right? These are massage businesses. They may or may not have sort of provocative names, right? But they're probably going to have black windows, or they're probably going to have cameras outside. Anybody know why those windows are black and why the cameras are outside? Anybody know? Privacy, right. They don't want law enforcement coming in, but that's not really what they're worried about. What they're really worried about is other criminals, right? This is a cash-only business with lots of cash on the premises. They're going to have security and gates and cameras to keep criminals out and to keep their victims in, right? There are over 300 active illicit massage parlors in Georgia. Approximately 50 of them are located in Atlanta. This bill will give the Massage Commission greater power to inspect and requires all commission members to be trained on human trafficking. This is a good first step, a long way to go in Georgia on this. In a lot of states, any peace officer in a state can go inside a massage establishment and inspect it, right? Without a warrant, they're doing a civil inspection. Without a warrant, right? We have a long way to go in Georgia. This is a great first step. It also adds convenience stores, massage therapy, and body art studios, tattoo studios, to the list of businesses which are required to display the human trafficking hotline. Next slide, please. So you heard a lot about this already. I'll just go over it really quickly because it's extremely important legislation that is going to have a huge impact, and we do want it to pass. So one more time on Senator Still's bill package, 512, creates a fund for all survivors. That fund is funded by an additional tax levied on anyone convicted of trafficking or a related crime. Additionally, as Senator Still said, it has a civil forfeiture provision. So that speedboat, right, that second home or that home, whatever that trafficker has purchased with the illicit proceeds made off of the backs of others is up for grabs. And once it's forfeited and levied, it can be put into this fund. And it works in conjunction with SR 616, a constitutional amendment that we would ask everyone to support and vote for when you see it on the ballot in the fall. Next slide, please. Yeah, that is correct. So that is a constitutional amendment that will have to be voted on in the fall by the public. Look for that on your ballot. If you have no other reason for going in the fall, go for this, okay? Next slide. You heard about the hotel-motel training. National studies show that at some point during their exploitation, 80% of victims reported being exploited out of a hotel or motel. As Pat said, the police cannot be anywhere, everywhere. This is a fair, straightforward bill that gives hotels some leeway in how they do this, but sets standards and forces them to have their employees trained. I've talked with numerous survivors over the years who have told numerous stories about being trafficked in hotels, sometimes for weeks at a time, or moved around in circuits, right, and brought to the same hotel again and again and again, and no one ever noticed and no one ever did anything, despite the fact that cleaning crews might not be allowed in, despite the fact that a number of men were going to the same room at all hours of the night, right? We need to train our hotel personnel. These represents thousands of eyes and ears across Georgia that can identify and safely report trafficking. They need to know what trafficking is. They need to know what to look for. Most importantly, they need to feel safe and secure that they can report and report anonymously. This bill will accomplish all that. And for hotels that already have trainings, programs in place, they can get those approved by the CJCC and keep moving forward with those trainings, right? Just a fantastic bill that is long overdue. Next slide. Oh, this one is very, very near and dear to my heart. I've actually been working with Jeff Shaw on Frontline Response on this exact issue. HB 910 is a bill aimed at preventing minors from accessing pornography on devices. A number of states have done this. In fact, Street Grace was in Texas testifying on a similar bill last session. We've worked in Louisiana on their bill as well. We are working around the country to try to get these bills passed. How do they work? Age verification. Anybody familiar with the concept of age verification? Ever bought anything online? We're like, oh, I promise I'm 18. You just click a box and it's like, oh, wow, that was easy. How would you know? Well, they don't know. They just have a box up there. It literally does nothing. This bill requires all providers who have a significant amount of adult content, pornography, on their website that they've produced or that they're hosting to place a real, verifiable, accurate, commercially reasonable age verification system. No more just clicking a box. You have to prove you're 18 by using state ID documents, by using a credit card, by using some other mechanism through a third party, right? 8 states have these laws in place. Texas was enjoined by federal court, and the Fifth Circuit, in a very big surprise move, said, no, not so fast. Enjoined, by the way, means the district court said, oh, this law is non-constitutional. You got some unconstitutional stuff in here. You're abridging free speech. We're shutting this law down. They got appealed to the Fifth Circuit. The Fifth Circuit said, yeah, we're okay with it. So that law is now in effect. Utah, like I said, Louisiana, we need this bill. There is no question that pornography is the gateway to human trafficking and exploitation. There is no question kids should not be viewing pornography. There is no question that pornography is used to groom children by predators of all stripes. There has also been shown that exposure to porn, the average age is 12 years old, and the first exposure is the majority of the time is accidental. Really, really exhorting you this morning to support this bill. We need this bill. We need to drive these bills up. We need to get them in front of federal courts, and we need to create a split in the circuit, and we need the federal government to address this issue. Right now, brave states like Georgia, like Texas, like Louisiana are stepping up and putting together laws to combat pornography. It's really the federal government's job. They've failed miserably. We have to force their hand and make them do that. Bills like this are the way to do it, and until they do take action, bills like this will work to protect our children. Next slide, please. House Bill 1130 by Representatives Holcomb and Representative Werkheiser. This provides a immunity defense for survivors. Very similar to duress, right? Very similar to self-defense, right? An immunity defense for victims who can prove that they would not have committed the crimes in question, had their traffickers not forced them. Traffickers take few risks. If they are going to be involved in any illegal activity whatsoever, whether that's transporting drugs or anything else, they're not going to do it, right? Why would they? Don't make her do it. Go do this. When she gets arrested, oh well. Now a defendant can come forward, assert that he or she was trafficked, and have immunity from these crimes. They bear the burden of showing that the offense was committed as a direct result of trafficking by a preponderance of the evidence standard, right? Which means a majority of evidence. It's a great bill that is going to protect survivors who have been forced to commit crimes, not for their own benefit, not for their own profit, for the profit of traffickers. Next slide, please. Senate Bill 378 by Senator Harbin. Tougher sentences for child traffickers. I think this one is really straightforward, and it's a great bill as well. Increases the penalties for sex trafficking a minor or developmentally disabled person. Increases from 25 to 30 years, and the fine goes up by $150,000. Nothing more to say here. We love the bill. Next slide, please. One bill that is not on our roster that I did want to share with you is House Bill 1184 by Representative Terry Anowitz. This is a restorative justice bill that provides a way for survivors to confront those who have abused them and work through this process under court supervision. It also works for several other areas of criminality. It's a great bill, House Bill 1184. Neglected to put that up here this morning, but we love that bill as well. So let's talk about how to advocate, particularly how to advocate this morning. When we disperse out, take a picture in front of the Capitol steps, and we go inside, right? One, there's a form letter inside of there listing all of the bills that we discussed this morning. So take a look at that. Using open states, you would just Google open states in your device. If you don't know, you can find out your state representative and your state senator, and that's who you want to prioritize this morning, because they're going to listen to you. Why are they going to listen to you? Because you vote for them, or don't vote for them. They don't know. Don't tell them you don't vote for them. Tell them you vote for them. They're going to take you very seriously, and they're going to be very, very nice to you. In fact, any office that you go to, they're going to take you very seriously, and they're going to be very nice to you. Nicer than they are to me, because, you know, I'm there, I'm bothering them all the time. They're going to be very nice to you. Put their name at the top, enter your address at the bottom. Educate them on the issue if you can. And if you're talking to a staffer, that is fine too. I spend most of my work day speaking with staffers, not with legislators. And that's the way I want it, and that's the way I like it, and that's why we're effective. Why? This is not meant to offend any legislators in the room. They have a lot on their minds. They're moving from committee meeting to committee meeting. They're worried about bill, right? When I communicate things about a bill, or I talk to someone, if I talk to them, they may or may not remember it. Why? Because they have a very big, busy day where they're going to be arguing and talking and discussing and making deals and trying to get their bills forward. And when a bill comes up, they're going to say, oh, they're going to turn to their staffer and say, oh, what about this one? And their staffer's like, oh, well, I spoke with so-and-so and going to inform them about that bill. It's actually better to speak to the staffers in a lot of cases, right? Because that's who they're going to go to. No human being can keep all of this in their mind. That's why they have the staffers. So if you are speaking with them, don't worry. Your information will get conveyed. So educate them on their issue if needed, but you want to be respectful of their insights, right? If you've got a few moments, look your senator and representative up. See what they've done on the issue before. See if they talk about it in their bio. Look and see if there's any bills that have been filed by them. And you can also ask, you know, whether it's the staffer or the representative or senator, him or herself. Like, Senator, I'm just interested. Are you supporting? Have you filed any have you filed or sponsored or co-sponsored any human trafficking legislation this session, or have you previously? I'd just like to know where you stand on this issue. It's fine to ask that as well. If you look it up and they have, thank them for it. Recognize that they have already begun working on this issue, and you want to thank them. Have a succinct message and ask, right? That message can be, here's a list of bills that I support and I want you to support. This is important. I want to prevent sexual exploitation of children in Georgia. You can talk about one or two bills that really call out to you that you think, okay, these are the bills that are most meaningful to me. I want them to pay most attention to these. And talk about that. Get the card of whoever you're talking to and follow up with a thank you, right? It never hurts. Why? Because you might be in there next year. You want them to remember you if that's possible. You want them to remember you, and you want them to take you seriously. So also get a card and follow up with a thank you. Next slide. You can also, I believe, Faith, is this inside the packet, the QR code? Okay, so inside your packet, you can also scan this, and it'll take you directly to open states, right? Next slide. Also want to share with you the hotline and resources, right? The big caveat to all of this, call 911 if anyone's in immediate danger. But if you see something, you suspect something, you can call the Street Grace 24/7 hotline, 1-833-FREE-2B, or 1-833-373-3223. There's the GBI's hotline, 1-866-END-HTGA, the National Human Trafficking Hotline, and the DFACS hotline. You can also submit tips online, cyber tips at cybertip.org. We'll leave that up just for a minute. Yes, ma'am. Is this in our purple bag, Faith? We're not sure. We will leave this up, though, if you want to take a picture of it real quick on our way out. Okay. Thank you, Jeff. According to Jeff, there's our resources. All right, next slide, please. That might be it. Yes. I would use survivors. Any other questions about any of the bills? Now is your time to ask if there's anything, if you had anything you wanted to know about it or the legislative process. Yes, ma'am. Sure. So the question is, can we go back to that slide also? Yeah. House Bill 910, adding the age verification, how does that prevent human trafficking? That's a great question. It operates in several ways. One, porn desensitizes children. It desensitizes adults as well. It desensitizes anyone who sees it. They're more vulnerable to sexual violence, right? They're more accepting of loss of boundaries. They are more desensitized to blatant sexuality. So right there, we are creating a vulnerability within people. In fact, the Texas Attorney General did a study on women who are working in strip clubs and found that working in there desensitized them and made them more vulnerable to trafficking as well, just being in that environment. So that's kind of what we're doing to our children. Okay, that's one. Secondly, it sends very, very, very much the wrong message to young men, right? When we allow them to see this, when we allow them to be just open, we're just saturated with pornography. What we're telling young men is, you know, this is what it is. This is how it is, right? We're telling them that this, along with the proliferation of illicit massage businesses, that like, look, you know, this is okay. This is what being a man is all about. You're grooming, in other words, or creating or forming a class of buyers who see sex as something transactional, who see sex as something that can be purchased. And when a trafficker comes along with a victim, maybe they'll be the one who steps up and gives them their money so they can purchase that victim. This is much more direct, but also sites like Pornhub have been sued for having videos involving trafficked persons on their site. Not only have they been sued and lost, they were also very reluctant to take that stuff down, even when it had a minor involved, right? So all of these and more, but I'm going to go ahead. We have some legislators here, so I'm going to cut myself short, but I thank you for your question. And
Sorry, I'm going to scoot this back over here. Good morning. Thank you, Jamie. So I'm going to be introducing Representative Terry Analowes. She was elected to the Georgia House of Representatives in a special election in November 2017. She represents House District 42, which includes part of Smyrna and Marietta, as well as areas in unincorporated Cobb County. She serves on the House Appropriation, Transportation, Code Revision, and Intergovernmental Coordination Committees. She is also the Secretary for the House Creative Arts and Entertainment Committee. In 2021, she was appointed to serve on the on the state's Capital Arts Standard Commission. Prior to her service in the legislation, Terry spent a decade representing Ward 3 on the Smyrna City Council. She was first elected in 2007 and was elected to her third term in 2015. In 2016, she was appointed as mayor pro tem for the city. Her professional experience includes public affairs and governmental relations with an emphasis on advocacy, alliance development, coalition building, and grassroots mobilization. Please help me introduce Representative Terry Arnales.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. It is a privilege to be here to speak to everyone who is congregated here, everyone who is online. Everyone is here to be part of this advocacy army fighting human trafficking in Georgia. I am State Representative Terry Anulowicz. I represent House District 42. If you have ever been to a Braves game, you have been to the district that I am honored to represent. And that leads me to when the Brave Stadium was announced, when the battery development was announced, I received a phone call from a very concerned constituent, and she said, I'm worried about this new stadium coming. I'm worried that it might bring human trafficking to Cobb County. And I thought, okay, this is a teachable moment. And I said, I am so glad that you are aware of this correlation. I said, and I also want to make sure you know that, unfortunately, human trafficking is already in Cobb County. Been here for a while. The good news is we have a lot of folks on the ground who are fighting hard. I talked about now Lieutenant Meredith Holt with the Smyrna Police Department and all of the work she has done to fight human trafficking. I talked about the coalition that we have with the FBI and with different law enforcement agencies, all of the different jurisdictions in Cobb, how we work together, how we work with the hotels and the motels, how everyone has been fighting this. But what we know is that this fight has not lessened. It doesn't matter if you have a stadium in your community, right? It's pervasive, it's everywhere. And so having Street Grace, having your advocacy, having your dedication and your commitment and your willingness to come downtown on a weekday morning to speak to us about your concerns and to share these tools, it is so important. I am a better policymaker because of the advocacy of Street Grace. And I'm not just a better policymaker, I am a better parent. I am a better Girl Scout troop leader. I have 2 teenagers. My son is 19, my daughter is almost 16. Because of what I have learned through working with Street Grace, I've been able to have developmentally appropriate conversations with my own children to keep them safe. Conversations about porn, conversations about what to watch out for, conversations about if they are seeing something happening with a friend who might have a new boyfriend or a new, whatever it is, help them understand how they can get help from the grown-ups who they trust, right? It's so important. So I was glad that y'all mentioned House Bill 1184, and if the number snuck up on you, it's because it used to be House Bill 382. We actually reintroduced it this year, but this is legislation that provides for victim-centered dialogues, victim offender dialogues, these programs that help bring closure to survivors of domestic violence, human trafficking, sexual assault, all of the things that we know we need to have these dialogues. We know that having this survivor participation is so important. And without evidentiary privilege, like you have when you're speaking to a member of the clergy, like you have when you're with medical candor, if a doctor has maybe done something wrong and they say they're sorry, that doesn't mean you can't then have justice for what happened to you. Having this evidentiary privilege will help strengthen these programs. So I'm very thankful for the support of everyone here on that legislation. I was actually introducing that in the House Rules Committee earlier this morning. So hopefully that legislation will move forward so we can have these victim-centered justice programs here in Georgia. But I do want to thank you again for being here today. You've gotten excellent resources, excellent communication tips. Y'all I want you to understand how important your voice is and how respected you are as advocates when you go into the Capitol. I think that's a really important thing to realize is elected officials, we need you. We need the voices. We need people to really be evangelists for this fight to help make sure everyone understands what human trafficking really does mean, why it is so detrimental, and why it is so pervasive. There is no corner of the state that is untouched. There is no economic, cultural, social group that is untouched by this. And again, I'm just so grateful that you are here today. Thank you for all of the support you give us here in the General Assembly. Thank you for helping keep us informed of issues that might not have occurred to us, right? There is always a teachable moment. And again, I'm so grateful to have had this these few moments to speak with you today, and I'm so grateful for all of the work that you are doing, and thank you for your support of these good policies that will continue to fight human trafficking in Georgia. Thank you.
All right, it's action time. You guys feeling good? Got to bring more energy than that to our elected officials. You guys feeling good? Yeah? Ready to make some change? Yeah. So I got involved in this work in 2011, and that was the year. How many people have been advocating around human trafficking since roughly the same time, within a year or so of 2011? A couple of hands. So just so you know, the battle we were fighting then was to not arrest children and charge them with prostitution. So if a 12-year-old had their body sold for sex and were on site, they could be arrested and charged with prostitution under Georgia's laws. And at the same time, our statutory rape laws said if that 12-year-old was having sex with a 25-year-old that she considered her boyfriend, we didn't view her as capable of consenting, and he was guilty of statutory rape. But if money changed hands, she was complicit and she was criminalized. That was a fight we were having just over 10 years ago. How exciting, year after year, the nuance and the level of what we're bringing now to, Director Ressler, or Inspector Ressler, sorry, I gotta get your title right, but it's so incredible to hear what your team is, I was pumped listening to him tell those stories and the number of cases they're bringing in. You have other members of your team here too, with you. Can we just, I know you didn't get to speak, but can we just thank them again for the work they're doing on the front lines? Thank you guys so much. And so that what we're doing today, so, if you walk in that office and your senator or representative isn't there and you drop it with their assistant or someone on staff, it can feel like you're not making that big of a deal. But for the senators and representatives that aren't here because it's already gripped their heart, I was listening to Senator Still, just blown away by the level of, this was not just I'm part of a bill and I think it does this and thank you for, he knew in detail what that bill was going to do and how it was going to move the needle. But there are a lot of senators and representatives that have not necessarily been introduced to the realities of human trafficking yet. And that's what you get to do, because you are the ones who they're going to be campaigning to in the next go-around. And so for them to hear from you as a constituent, this is an issue that matters to me, they may look at it possibly even for the first time. So I personally want to, as someone who does this work full-time, thank you so much. How many of you volunteer for different organizations or a church or something that impacts? So all of you that volunteer, thank you so much. If you're kind of, how many people do we have under 21 years old in the house? Look at this, man. Y'all, listen, yes. Y'all are the next generation of this fight, right? Jamie and I, we're going to keep at it as long as we can, but people are going to stop listening to us at some point, right? But you guys are the next wave of senators and representatives and law enforcement officers and prosecutors and counselors and social workers. So thank you for being here. We're going to go across the street and take a group photo. We love our group photos. I have them pinned up on all my cork boards over the years of doing Lobby Day. Bob, thank you for your leadership with Street Grace and Advocacy Day, and to all your team, Faith and Brooke and everybody else. And yes, please join us across the street, 10:30 sharp. That photo is snapping, so you'll either be edge of the frame, in the frame, or out of the frame. So 10:30 on the steps, and we'll drop these off. Thank you guys so much.